people like to read stuff that isn't too deep or gets deep, but there's still some fun in there. There's still some entertaining moments. There's still sex in it, obviously. I mean, you don't get through a book called The Maintenance Man about an escort without there being some sex scenes involved. So I just found that book when I was 19 years old, and I have, as you can see, I have not put it down in the 25 years, 24, 25 years since I found this book. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to a brand new edition of the Chris 2 Cents podcast here on the ChrisTheWriter YouTube channel, where myself, or Chris Stevens, yeah, that's my name. I think that's my name, Chris Stevens, a writer who's going to talk about his 2 cents with common sense. And of course, that 2 cents is going to be related to everything writing, journalism, art, things along self-improvement, things along those lines. And as I'm getting closer, I keep saying I'm getting closer to the finish line, but I swear I'm getting closer to the finish line on this spring turned summer romance novel that I'm working on. Hopefully I'll have a title for you guys the next time we cross paths in this regard. But I was thinking about, my path to being a independent novelist and a writer in a creative writing sense. I put out my first book in August of 2014. The story behind that's a whole nother podcast within itself. But I started thinking, I don't talk enough about the books that influenced me as a creative writer. And I'm going to start a small series of, episodes that talk about the books that inspired me as a writer. Some of them will be fiction, some of them will be nonfiction, some will be bios, some will be romance, some will be others. But I have to start with a book that I started reading the summer before I went to Delaware State University. This was 2001. This was a few months before 9/11, a few months before we lost Aaliyah in the plane crash. That was 2 weeks apart, by the way. Aaliyah died on the 26th of August, 25th, 26th of August, and 9/11 was like 2 weeks later. So 2.5 weeks later. So the world was turning upside down for a 19-year-old at that time, losing one of his favorite artists and women he had a crush on. And then, of course, the first terrorist attack on, American soil, pretty much. So 2001 was kind of like one of those years where it's just like, But before that, I found this book sitting in the living room in my mom's house in Wilmington, Delaware. And I heard about the book he had written prior, Men Cry in the Dark, but I hadn't had a chance to read that one. But I saw this cover and it got my attention. So one of the books that influenced me as a journalist not as a journalist, as a creative writer, is The Maintenance Man by Michael Baisden. As you can see, this is actually the original copy that my mom purchased not millions of years ago. Because let me see, this book came out 2001, didn't it? Let me go look as we're looking through. Well, yeah, it was copyrighted. Yeah, actually 2000. So yeah, so this book is 25 years old, and you could tell like it has seen better days. But I keep this close by because I actually enjoyed reading this book, but it was also something that really got me into urban fiction as a whole. If you never read The Maintenance Man, I mean, the book is 25 years old. I mean, if you haven't read it by now, chances are you probably won't. But if you want to, you can check it out. But there are, I guess you can call them spoilers. So yeah, we'll call them spoilers. So The Maintenance Man is about Malcolm Trammell, who is a gigolo, actually. I mean, the professional term is escort, but he's a gigolo. He's been in the game for close to 20 years, and he learned everything he learned from his father, who died getting shot to death, cheating with the woman next door to him in his mom's house. Not the dad. I mean, not Malcolm's dad. Well, Malcolm's dad, that would be Malcolm's mom and the dad's wife. So next door to them, he got caught cheating and got shot in the head with a shotgun by the offended husband, if you will. So Malcolm has been in the gigolo game for years. Like, he's one of the more sought after, male escorts in the country at this point. Like, there are women from all walks of life willing to pay for his services, if you will. And he's starting to have second thoughts about how long he's been in the game, and he relishes the role of a maintenance man, which is what he calls himself, when women need to have some readjustment and some attitude change and some orgasms. And he just starts he meets this dancer at a benefit where he's supposed to be hanging out with his homeboy, but he took one last date. He met this dancer. The date was offended. He gave her the money back because she was like, "I'm sorry, Malcolm, for your half-ass job. I hope that woman was worth it." Malcolm said she was, and he said, "I gave the envelope back." So he's starting to have second thoughts about this whole gigolo thing, but he can't pull himself out of the game as of yet. He's got all of these different appointments with different women, and his best friend Simon is going through some things with his fiance, finds out she's cheating with a prominent local pastor because he hired a private investigator to trail his fiance. And it's not funny. I mean, it's funny for the time. I mean, now like Simon would go to, he would be sued and probably prosecuted for revenge porn. But I'm not going to give too much more away of the story, but I promise. I think Simon's story is just as compelling as Malcolm's, because even though Simon's not a gigolo, he's still dealing with, this relationship that's souring, obviously, and that, gives readers something to sort of balance out what Malcolm is trying to do with his, escort commitments and trying to win over this woman who ends up being the last to know that he's a gigolo, he's an escort. So it's a very early 2000s urban fiction book. That's the best way I can describe it. Michael Baisden used to host a radio show. I mean, he was on he was on syndication for a while. He was on WDAS here in Philly, and he was actually on WHUR when I was living in the Maryland area at the time. So Michael Baisden's done a little bit of everything. And I feel like The Maintenance Man, just from a perspective of reading something that wasn't, it won't ever be considered for a Pulitzer or anything like that. I mean, it's not going to win too many. What was it, a New York Times bestseller? It was a national bestseller. It doesn't say New York Times bestseller, so it was a national bestseller. But you just want to write. I mean, people like to read stuff that isn't too deep or gets deep, but there's still some fun in there. There's still some entertaining moments. There's still sex in it, obviously. I mean, you don't get through a book called The Maintenance Man about an escort without there being some sex scenes involved. So I just found that book when I was 19 years old, and I have, as you can see, I have not put it down in the 25 years since I found this book. And it kind of informed the way that I write fiction, from a Black perspective, because I just wanted to write something that was as interesting as this, because this was interesting to me. I mean, other people, you may feel differently. I can't tell you how to feel about a book. That's not my job. That's not my responsibility. But what I can tell you is that when I started thinking about what I wanted my novels and short stories to look like, this book played a huge part in that. And I'm not ashamed to say that. So shout out to Michael Baisden for The Maintenance Man, because it made me realize that, yes, I could write too. I was a journalist, but when I started thinking back to that book, when I started thinking about other books that I'll probably mention, because like I said, this is going to become a series, that, there's nothing wrong with writing stuff that, people may find to be a little lowbrow, but still very entertaining. And I'm not saying The Maintenance Man is lowbrow. I enjoyed it for what it was. Other people may not. Other people may not have, but I enjoyed it very much, without a doubt. And I mean, I'm probably due for a reread. I might actually do that one of these days when the NBA playoffs is on a break, because I can't, I'm so invested in whether Oklahoma City and Indiana can finish these series out, because they both lost big time the last couple nights. So very interested to see how those series end up. The WNBA season is underway and all of that, but I'm going to get back to my reading. And but at the same time, I got to finish this novel that I'm working on. But when people wonder, Chris, what has motivated you? Are there any books that motivate you? There are plenty. And this is one of the first ones that I could think of. As a matter of fact, it might actually be the first. No, it's the second. I'll tell you, I'll share the first another time. But this was the second book that definitely just got into my system from an urban Black fiction standpoint. Was like, yo, this is entertaining. It caught my attention. And when I started writing, I was like, yeah, I could do something like this. So once again, shout out to Michael Baisden and the Maintenance Man. This book definitely still has a special place in my heart, even though, I probably need to stop apologizing for stuff that I like and stuff that I think is good, because I mean, we all know that art is a matter of subjectivity and taste anyway. I may like it. Anybody else that might have read this book might have hated it. That's cool. But for me, I enjoyed this book thoroughly. And like I said, I'm probably due for a reread in the very near future. I had to dig this out of storage because when I moved to my apartment in 2022, I never really took my books out of storage. I only took stuff out when I was in the mood to read it. I probably need to just find a shelf and put all of this stuff on. But yeah, shout out to Michael Baisden and the Maintenance Man. Book's been out 25 years. I got a hold of it, and it's 24 years ago, and it's definitely informed a lot of my fictional writing for anybody that's been curious. So that's basically what this episode is. Like I said, it's probably going to be a series of books that I talk about that influenced me as a writer, books that I enjoy, and other things, of that nature. I wouldn't call myself a booktuber by any stretch of the imagination, because I just, I could, but I still feel like this channel is better served as me talking about writing from a perspective of being a writer and not just a reader. I mean, being a reader, you got to read in order to write. There's no doubt you got to read in order to write. So just wanted to share that with you guys, get this series kicked off, and obviously do a video because I don't want to, just leave you guys hanging like I did for most of May. And by the way, before I sign off, June is Black Music Month. Have you subscribed to On the Groove Line yet? On the Groove Line is my official music YouTube channel, and June is Black Music Month. I get busy during Black Music Month. You might remember the BMM 30 series here on this YouTube channel. Unfortunately, I'm probably going to have to start moving those videos over to the music channel. So if they start disappearing, you'll know why. But if you didn't get that announcement, just ask me and I'll be glad to tell you, and I'll just point you over to the Groove Line. Subscribe to the Groove Line. Subscribe to the Groove Line. We have a Facebook page too, facebook.com/on the Groove Line, youtube.com/@on the Groove Line. Subscribe to those two pages and channels, and be prepared, man, because I'm going to have interviews. I'm going to do reviews as I always do of music. And again, like I said, I'm transitioning this channel to more of a writing, journalism, creative writing channel than I am talking about music and culture and everything else. All of that stuff is going to go over to the Groove Line. And I'm very much looking forward to sharing that journey with you and more of the writing journey on this channel. And that's my 2 cents for this episode. Greatly appreciate y'all's time. As always, once again, contact information will be in the description below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on the videos and share so everybody else can see. So thank y'all for watching. Until the next time we speak, y'all be good or be good at it.